NATO Chapter 5 very clearly outlines that an attack on one is an attack on all. So I think that's the determination that NATO leaders will be making right now. You've already seen that picture of Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, and President Biden having an emergency meeting at 5 o'clock local time in Bali. Remember, this is the concluding day of the G20 session, and without a doubt, this will be the biggest talking point in that meeting. Remember, Russia has been facing battlefield losses in Ukraine, most recently with the loss of Kherson, the third biggest city. So it could very well be that this is Russia's way of once again trying to assert itself as the victor on the battlefield, as the one that has the advantage on the battlefield. But like I said, this qualitatively changes the nature of this war over the last 9 months. Because if a NATO member has been attacked, then there is no way NATO can be seen as not responding. But so far, the heartening thing is all parties, including the United States, Poland, and of course, you've heard from both the Ukrainian foreign minister and the Ukrainian president, all of them seem to be taking a very, very cautious approach indeed. So I think that is a good step. An emergency meeting of the G7 has been called. That will be happening on the sidelines of the G20. It'll be interesting to see what India's position will be as well, because remember, India so far has not taken a public position criticizing Russia. But if indeed it is established that these missiles, these Russian-made missiles, were launched with the intent of hitting a NATO member, then I think this changes the entire war as we know it over the last 9 months.
So Zaka, just yesterday only, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated India's long-standing position in favor of dialogue and diplomacy in Ukraine and Russian conflict. And today we are seeing this missile attack. So, and Ukraine has also claimed that this was done by Russia, as the missile was identified as a Russian-made missile. So, was it an intended attack? Can we say it was an intended attack on Poland, or Russia wanted to fire that missile in Ukraine, but because of the close proximity that Poland and Ukraine share, it mistakenly struck Poland?
It is entirely possible. It is entirely possible that, remember, just overnight we've had Ukrainian cities also being hit, multiple cities being hit, including Kiev, where there have been more than a dozen attacks. So it's entirely possible that this was part of the missiles that were meant to hit Ukrainian cities, but of course Poland borders Ukraine, and therefore it is entirely possible that this accidentally strayed off into Polish territory. So that is one possibility. The second, of course, is that this was never meant to hit Poland in the first place, that this was an accidental launch by somebody in Russia. Also, it is entirely possible this was launched from a third country. Remember, Russia has been selling its missiles to a number of countries around the world, including to Ukraine, which is, of course, which was part of Russia until 1991, part of the USSR until 1991. So it's entirely possible that this could have been fired from Ukraine as well. All of these are right now in the realm of speculation. I think the first and most important thing is to establish where these were fired from and whether these were fired by design, whether they were fired by intent to attack Poland or whether this was by accident. Because in that determination will lie the future course of action. If indeed U.S. investigators and other European partners come to the conclusion that this was launched from Russia with the intention of hitting a NATO member, then their response is going to be entirely different. Because like I said, under Chapter 5 of NATO, NATO is bound by its Articles of Foundation to attack and to respond if any one member of NATO is attacked. But if it is established that this was by accident, it was a missile meant for Ukraine that accidentally strayed onto Polish territory, then the determination and the response would be a totally different one. So far, what we know is that there's going to be an emergency G7 meeting. NATO will also have an emergency meeting on the sidelines of the G20 to try and figure out how to respond to this. All parties, the important stakeholders, so far seem to be taking a cautious approach, including Poland, which is the affected country. The Polish president has said that they have not come to a determination yet on where this was fired from and whether this was fired with deliberate intent. They do know that it was a Russian-made missile. That is as much as what they are confirming right now. We know it's hit a village on the eastern border of Poland with Ukraine, and that 2 people died. There have been conversations between the Polish president and the president, as well as between the Polish president and the Ukrainian president. And I think the first big and most important determination that world leaders need to make is who fired this rocket and what was the intention behind firing this rocket. Was it a deliberate act to try and provoke NATO, to try and provoke a NATO member, and to try and attack a NATO member. I think once that determination happens, then we will see the next course of action.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zaka, for giving us all those details. And we have another breaking news coming in. Biden has now called an emergency meeting of G7 on the missile attack that happened in Poland. So now US President Joe Biden will be holding an emergency meeting of G7 on missile strike that happened in Poland. So just a while ago, we told you that US Secretary of State Antony Blinken tweeted on this missile attack, and now US President Joe Biden will also be holding an emergency meeting of G7 on this missile strike on Poland. My colleague Abhishek Jha is with us from Bali, who will give us more details on this. Abhishek, so US President Joe Biden is also in Bali for the G20 summit. So now he has called for this emergency meeting. So can you give us more details of this meeting?
So while G7 and G20 meetings were on in Bali, it was believed that probably by this time there would be some strong statements coming from G20 on the issue of Russia-Ukraine war, and probably the staff communicates they're going to have that this is not the era of war phase also. But I mean, the missile attack has come, and this has clearly made things worse. Because now, first we saw that the Polish government has asked for a NATO meeting, but now we are also seeing that President Biden himself has initiated a G7 member countries meeting. So we are clearly going to witness a lot of diplomatic and economic escalation against Russia. But we still have to wait for the confirmation from the Polish side, because they are the authority on the ground there, whether that attack, that missile that has been on the ground was of it was clearly of Russian origin, but whether it was actually fired by Russia or it was an accidental case where some defense missile from the Ukraine side may have veered the Russian missile off the coast and into the on ground of Poland. But for that, before that confirmation comes, there is clearly a strong support and a very clear message from G7 for the support of Ukraine and Poland or for other NATO members, and against Russia. That if anything goes wrong, Russia will have to face the brunt of it. And with this whole G7 group coming together, there is going to be a clear, aggression or more strong will come against.
Right, Abhishek. I think we've lost the line with Abhishek. I'd like to go to our guest, Patikrit. So, Patikrit, as mentioned by Mr. Vishnu Prakash, that Biden had claimed that if there is an attack on NATO soil, there will be a wholesome response. So, what can we expect from the meeting that has been called today?
You know, it all seems so much to fall in line as part of perhaps a grander design. I mean, I would have loved to see, everybody would have loved to see, tweets coming which talks about de-escalation, to look at it from a perspective of let's not escalate, let's try to find out how things can be settled, let there be peace. Nobody's talking about those things, neither from the West. So everyone is trying to use this, perhaps the G20 forum also, to pin down Russia as well and say, let's go for a full-fledged war. In fact, if you look at the pattern of conflicts that has happened after the end of Second World War, every major conflict, the West has been involved, especially United States and some of the Western European countries. They have done it away from their own mainland. So unfortunately, and very unfortunately, if they try to escalate from here without giving a benefit of doubt, then Poland will be the next Ukraine. And it would only mean more devastation, more problem, more supply chain constraints, more rise in price of oil and other commodities. The reality is, both sides need to sit together and sort it out. Let me today say, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash sir also mentioned it very rightly. Today, it's no more a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's a war between Russia and NATO, which is going on. Ukraine is just a proxy. Unfortunately, if you look at the pattern of Second World War also, this is how one country after another became a proxy or battleground for the conflicts to happen. Also, remember one thing. Poland was a landing hub for supply of all kind of weapon systems to Ukraine. Poland itself supplied more than 300 units of armored fighting vehicles, including 230 tanks, self-propelled howitzers, other kinds of artilleries to Ukraine. Poland took the initiative to even supply 29 units of MiG-29 to Ukraine. So
Right, sir.
Poland has been active into this conflict also.
Absolutely.
Now, we hopefully it was a mistake. Hopefully it just flew and fell by mistake in Poland. But if it is something else,
So
then
we
let's
have a
say,
reaction from Polish Prime Minister on this missile attack. I would just like to, our viewers to listen into the reaction, and then I'll come right back to you.
Prowadzimy analizy i konsultacje z naszymi sojusznikami w zakresie potencjalnego użycia artykułu 4 Traktatu Waszyngtońskiego, czyli artykułu, który uruchamia konsultacje w ramach Paktu Północnoatlantyckiego. Weryfikujemy przesłanki, które mogą służyć do tego, aby ten artykuł 4 został użyty. Po trzecie, zdecydowaliśmy również o wezwaniu ambasadora Federacji Rosyjskiej do Ministerstwa Spraw Zagranicznych. Pan minister spraw zagranicznych będzie wkrótce rozmawiał z ambasadorem rosyjskim. Pozostajemy też w stałym kontakcie z rządem Ukrainy. Pan prezydent rozmawiał z panem prezydentem. Ja jestem w kontakcie z panem premierem Ukrainy.
It's time for a short break, but we'll be right back with more latest updates on this.
Senior officials said that the issue will be resolved within 2 days and teams have been deployed to address this.
6 दिन से 24 घंटे इस उम्र में मुझे पानी के लिए दौड़ना पड़ रहा है। कभी कभी पानी अगर आता है तो इतना गंदा आता है, इतना स्टिंक करता है, आप बताइए कितना है हमारे हेल्थ को खराब करेगा। अब 6 दिन से पानी नहीं है, कोई सुनने वाला नहीं।
टैंकर्स नहीं भेज पा रहे हैं, जो टैंकर्स आ रहे हैं वो कुछ लोगों को दे रहे हैं, सबको नहीं दे पा रहे। सेकेंडली, टैंकर्स के पास पाइप्स नहीं है। अब हर इंसान यहाँ पाइप नहीं खरीद सकता ना।
A car rammed into a motorcycle rider in Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal district. The police have launched an investigation into the matter.
A heart-wrenching video has surfaced from Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal. The footage shows an uncontrollable car ramming into the motorcycle rider. The entire incident was caught on CCTV camera. The video shows a motorcycle rider being hit hard by a car and then dragged for a few meters before getting up immediately. Despite the horrific incident, the motorcyclist had suffered minor injuries. After the video went viral on social media, the police has launched an investigation into the entire matter.
Meanwhile, thousands of CPIM workers protested against Kerala Governor Arif Mohammed Khan. The party protested till the Raj Bhavan. In fact, the ruling CPIM and the governor have been at loggerheads over allegations of nepotism by government officials in the appointment of vice-chancellors to universities. The issue intensified after the Supreme Court annulled the appointment of a vice-chancellor of one of the technical universities in Kerala.
The Left Democratic Front has taken out a protest march from outside the museum compound to Raj Bhavan, protesting against the stand taken by Kerala Governor. Hundreds of workers.
Welcome back. You're watching CNN News 18 and we are continuously tracking this story where there has been a missile attack in Poland and 2 people have even died in this incident, and the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile, and meanwhile Ukraine has claimed that it was fired by Russia, whereas Russia has denied any responsibility in this attack. And meanwhile, a NATO meeting has also been called. I would like to go to our guest, Mr. Patikrit Paine, who was giving his views on the NATO meeting which has been called today. So please continue.
Well, we have to only see how NATO actually reacts to this. I think they should ideally go for a thorough investigation and make sure, they do away with all their doubts. There is a strong possibility that because in the last 48 hours, Russia has been, striking a series of missiles into Ukrainian territory, and Poland being in proximity of Ukraine, the possibility of a stray missile falling inside Poland which is unintended cannot be ruled out. I think NATO should look into these possibilities before taking any action. But unfortunately, and very unfortunately, it seems NATO has already decided they want to do something, in terms of making sure that they want to be seen as not blinking first. So this is where the challenge is. As things stand today, there was always this potential fear that sooner or later the conflict between Russia and Ukraine would go beyond the borders of these two countries and may potentially reach other parts of Europe, especially Eastern Europe, and that is perhaps going into that direction. And if that happens, that already it is more or less a full-fledged conflict going on between Russia and NATO, led by United States. But a pretext is used for further escalation, more supply of weapon systems to Ukraine, direct attacks on Russia, then, God forbid, we might see a full-fledged world war in 2023. So I think both sides need to calm down. The problem is neither side want to cede any ground. Problem is neither side want to blink first. Problem is it has become an ego issue for both the sides. While a lot of blame is pinned on Russia, but unfortunately, the West also had no intention from the beginning of this year to de-escalate the situation, to reduce the conflict, and to settle for peace. It takes just one phone call from Biden administration, President Biden to President Putin to de-escalate the whole thing. But unfortunately, neither side will do this, and this is why the whole world will continue to suffer. We have seen throughout from 2020 onwards, because of COVID crisis, followed by the conflict between Ukraine and Russia and the zero COVID policy in China, there has been a lot of problems the world has faced in terms of unprecedented rise in the price of commodities, inflationary tendencies, food crisis. I think these issues would continue to become even more profound in the coming days, especially in 2023, if these two sides don't blink. But it doesn't seem that NATO or United States led the Western bloc is willing to blink. I think the G20 summit will be used as some kind of a theater for the 7 countries of Group 7 to sit together and plan and tell it to the world, perhaps, that look what Russia is doing. So I think it's all planned and staged out. The possibility of a false flag operation cannot be ruled out. Possibility of a mistaken attack cannot be ruled out. Possibility of a deliberate attack also cannot be ruled out, because Poland has been a landing hub for supply of weapon systems into Ukraine. So we have to see how it evolves. But situation as it stands today, these things portend a very, very, very dangerous and a very, very alarming situation which is coming up, which is not good for the world at all.
Absolutely, sir. I'd like to go back to Mr. Vishnu Prakash. Sir, as Mr. Patikrit mentioned, that this is not a war between Russia and Ukraine, but it's a war between Russia and NATO. Your take on this?
Yes, I think Patikrit is spot on. Let us see what is happening. The conflict the face of the conflict is Ukrainian, but the trigger is essentially Western. And even the virtual finger on the trigger is Western, because this conflict is also being fought remotely. Satellite imagery is being brought into play. Unmanned vehicles are being brought into play. Drones are being brought into play. So it is literally the warfare of the 21st century, plus the psyops and the information warfare or the disinformation warfare, where the narrative is being controlled by the West, and all Western media organizations and the social media in particular has blocked off the Russian voice. I'm not saying that Russia is not culpable. I mean, Russia is absolutely culpable, because the conflict was started with Russia and the aggression was undertaken by Russia. But today what we are hearing is the narrative, is the Western narrative. And in the fog of war, who is doing what is not clear, because the kind of certain things that have happened in Russia, the attack on the bridge leading to Crimea, the damage to the Nord Stream pipeline, etc. This is something that could not have been done by Russia. So the short point is that each side is escalating. Each side is trying to find gain an advantage over the other, and that's a recipe for disaster. Now, when it comes to these two missiles, the fact also is that I recall several months ago, there was either an ammunition dump which was established very close to the Polish border by Ukraine, or there were troops. I forget which of the two were there. So it is being done intentionally also to provoke Russia. And when Russia strikes at these are natural military targets, the chance of an accident can happen. But similarly, it could well be possible, although I think it will be quite provocative at this time for Russia to have warned Poland that they could escalate. But this timing would be awful if that was done. But fortunately, so far at least, the West, no side is trying to claim that Russia has done that. Even the Western response is very calibrated, is very careful that let us see what is happening. In the meantime, it is natural for US to consult with G7 countries and consult with the NATO. Let us hope that there will be clarity. And unless there is a smoking gun, no precipitative action will be taken.
Right, sir. I'd like to go back to my colleague Abhishek Jha. So, Abhishek, US President Joe Biden has called an emergency meeting today. At what time will the meeting be held, and what all can be expected from the meeting?
So clearly, this meeting is going to happen shortly from now, and also assuming we have to also put in the perspective that how this latest missile attack is going to impact the G20 meeting that was scheduled all through the day. Morning, like 2 hours from now, all the leaders were supposed to go to the nearby mangrove forest where some talks on climate change and things like that will have happened. But now it seems that maybe many other leaders will have certain other priorities. Meeting G7 leaders is scheduled today. In the wake of that G7 meeting, Prime Minister of Japan and UK Prime Minister, the early scheduled meeting has been cancelled. We'll also have to see Prime Minister Modi was also scheduled to meet about 8 leaders from G20 nation. Many of them were European, of course, President of France and Italy, Spain, Singapore. We'll have to see how how the day progresses, whether these meetings will still be on schedule or will the G7 leaders will have other priorities, because the latest escalation that we are witnessing in Poland is quite high in nature, and that can actually go ahead as a full-fledged war, because Poland and NATO and USA are almost fully invested in war. If you talk about monetary assistance, arms, ammunition, surveillance, or any type of intelligence inputs that Ukraine might need. So, except that the front or the men of Ukraine are fighting against Russia, all the sort of support have been provided from NATO and USA and their allies in Ukraine. So, with now Poland also likely to fall in that game, whether this war will actually escalate to a full-fledged war, or will there be some maturity, and until there is some proper investigation, there will be no major announcement. That we'll have to see, because clearly Poland had not yet confirmed whether this missile that has fallen onto their ground was fired by Russian forces against Poland very willingly, or whether it was an accident, inadvertent fly of a missile. We'll have to wait for that, but the G7's reaction is very strong and very, very quick on that matter. And as the day progresses, we'll have to wait for their joint statements or how the G7 is going to react from Bali onto the accident or the missile incident that has happened in Poland.
Right, Abhishek. I'd like to go back to Mr. Patikrit. Patikrit, as Mr. Vishnu Prakash said, that the whole narrative is being controlled by the West, and the social media has blocked Russia's voice, and it has been portrayed that Russia is the villain and everything is done by Russia. And so what would you like to say on this?
No, Vishnu sir has rightly mentioned it, and if you look at it, the West always talks about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. But then why is it that all the major social media sites which are controlled by Western organizations have blocked the Russian views? Why is it that Russian channels are not aired freely in Europe and United States? Why is there some kind of a unofficial or official blockade on that? So the problem is Russia has, the problem is Russia doesn't speak English. So their ability to communicate with the rest of the world is a little limited, and so people don't understand most of the time what the Russian part of the story is. Look at it. The crux of the reason why this conflict started is because of NATO's unbridled expansion spree, which continued even when the Cold War ended and Soviet Union disintegrated. We must remember that NATO was formed to protect the Western Bloc from Soviet Union. When Soviet Union disintegrated, in that kind of a situation, there was no reason for NATO to keep on expanding. So they expanded so much that today they are at the doorstep of Russia. And of course, once the NATO wanted to set up their ballistic missile defense systems and offensive weapon systems there, obviously there was very little other option for Russia but to react on some or the other way. The presumption and what the West keeps on saying that Russia is on an expansion mode, Russia wants to take over and next erstwhile Soviet Union regions. If that has been the reason, Russia could have gone for low-hanging fruits like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. These countries would have fallen into the Russian fold much easier. They wouldn't have needed to go for Ukraine. The problem is Ukraine should have ideally stayed neutral. They wanted to join, NATO, and NATO wanted them to join to create a situation. Unfortunately, look at this: that from the time the conflict between Russia and Ukraine started, West, especially the United States, have already sold weapon systems worth $50 billion to many of the Eastern European countries in the pretext of how, they are at serious threat from Russia. So this is how the narrative is controlled from Russia, from the West. And we have to understand, from the time of the end of Second World War, every major conflict, while it has always been said that there is peace in the world after the end of Second World War, look at the conflicts that the West did, and especially United States. In the 1950s, we had the Korean War. It was a war which the US fought with Soviet Union in a third country, which was in Korea. Then the devastating Vietnam War happened. Nobody talked about human rights then. Then the whole oil crisis, oil-related crisis and war started. The Iraq-Iran war started. The West funded Saddam Hussein to fight the Iranian regime. And then the same Saddam Hussein, when it became powerful, the West again funded, militaries to defeat him. And then in the pretext of war on terror, they entered Iraq, devastated the whole country, created such a bottomless pit of mayhem that eventually ISIS was formed out of it. They went to Afghanistan. God knows what they did for 20 years. Eventually, they gave away the same Afghanistan to Taliban. They spent $2 trillion and gave a huge amount of money went to the military contractors of United States. And then there's an emerging crisis after that, in the whole Ukraine-Russia region. Problem for the West is half of Russia is in Europe, half is in Asia. So they can they can never, take Russia away from their scheme of things or mindset. And they still believe that Russia is a threat to their existence. And keeping that 1960s mindset, they have started this thing. It is so surprising. There was a time 2 decades back when this same Prime President Putin wanted to be part of NATO, wanted to work with NATO. And today, look at how things have turned around. If you keep on projecting Russia as a threat to the world, which the Russians are not, which the Russians are simply not, then invariably a conflict was supposed to happen, and it actually helps the military-industrial complex of some of the Western countries, aided by and led by United States. They are making money, and if you look at what is going to happen beyond this, Russia is a commodity-driven economy. It supplies commodity to the rest of the world. Invariably, once you take Russia out of the scheme of the oil market, you have put sanctions on Russia, on Ukraine, on Venezuela, under CAATSA, and then what you have spiraling prices of oil, for which countries like India suffer. And if we say it, then we will be called renegade. And so, if you see what they are doing, we put our hard-earned foreign exchange reserve in the U.S. Treasury. They can impose sanctions on that anytime. So this is not the way we talk about democratic world or free world. This is a world where the West controls everything. Your financial resources, who would be sanctioned and who would be not, what is a war and what is not. There's a very interesting saying that when UK or the Britain invades a country, it is called civilization. When the Americans invade a country, it's called liberation. And when Russia does the same, it's called invasion. So these double standards must end. Remember, it was the same US-led NATO which bombarded Yugoslavia and Belgrade for 75 days. The city of Belgrade was bombarded for 75 days to force Milosevic to Slobodan Milosevic to surrender. So these double standards are at the core reason why this conflict has happened. Because the media today is driven by the West, we don't know the other side. It doesn't mean Russia is not at fault. I'm not saying that. But the fault both sides should share. And I think this is where countries like India and the voice of the Prime Minister of India, who talks about that war is not a solution and war is not an option for this millennium. This message is for both for Russia as well as for the West. The West drives its economy with war. Every 5 and 10 years, you would see a conflict has happened, a major conflict, because these conflicts help in terms of, brushing up or pirating up the demand for a lot of commodities. And that is how the economies over there survive and flourish. This has to change. If the sanctions are taken away from Russia and Iran, I'm telling you, the price of oil will fall by 50%. But that is not something the West will do. And at the same time, we'll keep on blaming that because of Russia, the price of oil has gone up. So I think the world needs to look at it, how things are happening. Look at G20 meeting. In G20 meeting, the priority was supposed to be health, supposed to be, digital economy. It was supposed to be economy. From today, today is a penultimate day. What would be the objective and core focus? It would be Russia. So even when Russia is not present in the G20 meeting today, the core focus will shift towards Russia. Everything else, which are of importance to humanity today, will be sidelined. And this is the real unfortunate thing. I hope it was not a false flag operation. I hope it was not deliberately done by the Russians. But unfortunately, what I believe is that these are precursors to a major conflict where NATO want to use Poland as the next proxy for the conflict to escalate. And that will not be good for the rest of the world.
Right, so we have another breaking news coming in. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has now reacted on this missile strike that happened in Poland. He has tweeted, and I quote, "I have just spoken with Foreign Secretary and Defense Secretary. We are urgently looking into reports of a missile strike in Poland and will support our allies as they establish what has happened. We are also coordinating with our international partners, including NATO." So UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has also now reacted on this missile attack that has happened in Poland. My colleague Abhishek Jha for more details on this. Abhishek, now after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and President Joe Biden, now UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has also reacted to this incident. Give us more details on this.
It's very important because in the wake of the latest G7 meeting that is scheduled later for the day, the statements coming from USA Foreign Secretary and now Prime Minister himself of UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is a clear indication that G7 is not going to let these things go very easily, and they're going to do some very strong message or strong statements is going to come from that meeting which was scheduled. Also, there is going to happen a meeting of NATO envoys where discussion will be regarding this latest incident of missile falling on the grounds of Poland. The whole schedule of G20 looks like it's going to have some rescheduling of regarding leaders meeting, because with the G7 meeting coming in a few hours from now, the meeting between UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has been cancelled. So clearly, the kind of work or the kind of team, the kind of priorities that G20 leaders were trying to work around looks like little off the way now with the latest crisis that has hit the Poland, and with the joint statement which was scheduled to come later today in the afternoon. We'll have to wait how much of rephrasing of that joint statement will also happen, because it looks like Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has already left from Bali after attending first day of G20 meeting. And though all 20 leaders or all members of G20 needs to sign that joint declaration, but now with the Russian Foreign Minister having left Bali, we'll have to wait how the modalities of the protocol works regarding declaration of the joint communique, where all the members have to agree on certain aspects as to what should they look for, what are the crises in the world and what is their approaches and we'll have to wait for that because with the latest crisis emerging from Poland, the total schedule at G20 is also little off, and we are going to have some more strong statements coming from USA. We have already seen Anthony Blinken's statement or the Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki's statement. We'll have to wait for the G7 meeting as to what all transpires during the discussion and what all is going to be the statement from the leaders' speech.
Abhishek, can you also tell us if the G7 meeting will include NATO as well, or will the NATO hold a separate emergency meet?
NATO envoys are holding a separate meeting probably in Brussels and here in Bali, where all the G7 leaders are present physically. So it's also important to understand that normally these G7 meetings have happened in the past virtually, where all the leaders have joined through internet and through other means. But currently, most of the leaders are in Bali, where like Prime Minister of Canada, UK, USA President Joe Biden is also here. Japan Prime Minister is also here. Italy Prime Minister is also with all leaders present here physically and their senior, colleagues or ministers of foreign affairs or their secretary advisors of being present. This meeting becomes automatically very important because they can actually take a very strong call with all the leaders present themselves and all the security advisors and the foreign ministers present at the site. So this physical meeting that is going to happen in Bali is sometimes from now is very important as we in the light of this Russia-Ukraine conflict and the latest escalation that we have. We can presume that has happened through the missile falling onto Ukraine, onto the Polish territory.
Right, Abhishek. It's time for a short break, but we'll be right back with all the latest updates from this missile that has struck Poland. Stay tuned.
Into the entire matter.
Meanwhile, thousands of CPIM workers protested against Kerala Governor Arif Mohammad Khan. The party protested till the Raj Bhavan. In fact, the ruling CPIM and the governor have been at loggerheads over allegations of nepotism by government officials in the appointment of vice-chancellors to universities. The issue intensified after the Supreme Court annulled the appointment of a vice-chancellor of one of the technical universities in Kerala.
The Left Democratic Front has taken out a protest march from outside the museum compound to Raj Bhavan, protesting against the stand taken by Kerala governor. Hundreds of workers have gathered here under the LDF. All their allies, the CPM, CPI, all of them are taking part in this. They have said that it is a higher education protection summary that has taken out this march.
The tussle between Kerala Governor Arif Mohammad Khan and Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. In fact, Arif Mohammad Khan has alleged that all appointments in state universities are illegal. He further went on to say that the LDF government thinks that the university and properties are our party cadre and that of relatives. The governor even commented on the protest and said that the government cannot pressurize him.
Research in Kerala universities has come to a standstill. Why? Because bright students of Kerala, they do not want to stay in Kerala. So much party politics, so much interference in the universities, they go safely to some other place. They do not come to the Raj Bhavan. Do you hope they will come to the... Because they themselves know that what they are doing is not in accordance with law.
UP police SUV has hit toddlers who were crossing the road in Uttar Pradesh's Bagpat. The video has gone viral on social media.
2 children were hit by a vehicle on a busy street in Bagpat district of Uttar Pradesh. A viral video footage of the event shows a vehicle charging in and striking the 2 youngsters as they crossed the street. The kids were taken straight to the hospital and the treatment is underway. The vehicle turned out to be a police response vehicle. The vehicle that hit turned out to be a police response vehicle. The footage shows bystanders rushing to help children right after the car hit. According to the authorities, children have received minor injuries and are no longer in danger.
NASA is finally moving forward with the Artemis 1 moon mission. The project got delayed post the rocket getting plagued with leaks as well as damage from Hurricane Nicole. But after repairs, it's all set to be launched tomorrow morning.
NASA says it's on track for the Artemis 1 mission to launch Wednesday. That could pave the way for US astronauts.
Welcome back. So after a missile struck Poland's village Zawodo, now Poland President Andrzej Duda and US President Joe Biden are holding talks over this explosion in eastern Poland. My colleague Abhishek Jha for more details on this. Abhishek, how are they holding these talks? Are these talks virtually being held?
So mostly the leaders and their advisors, their foreign minister are present in Bali only. So this leaders meeting is going to happen currently, and
there is preliminary information that contests that. I don't want to say that till we completely investigate. It's unlikely in the minds of the trajectory as it was fired from Russia, but we'll see.
It's unlikely, sir. Mr. President, has Poland suggested invoking Article 4 or 5 from NATO, sir? Down in front, guys. Down in front.
We're going to probably have a meeting of the ambassadors. So that looks like we're going to go to next. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was US President Joe Biden reacting on the Poland missile strike. And we have this breaking news that Poland's President Andrzej Duda and US President Joe Biden will be holding talks over this explosion in eastern Poland. My colleague Abhishek Jha to give us more details on this meeting which is going to be held between the Poland President and US President. Abhishek.
So this meeting could be likely to virtual meet because the Polish Prime Minister is in Poland, and but this meeting is most likely going to happen physically, where all the leaders will be meeting with their senior advisor, and that is more important because Poland has yet not confirmed with whether that attack of missile which has fallen on its ground was well intended and against Poland, or whether it was just some mistakes that might have happened from Ukrainian side, some Russian missile have veered off from its trajectory, or some other possibilities of some other nations firing a missile on the Poland could be a case. But so far we know that the thing that has happened in Poland has not gone down well with G7 leaders and NATO members, and there's going to be an urgent meeting of NATO members. Their envoys will be attending that, while G7 leaders, who are all present with their full strength in Bali, are going to have a meeting very soon. That meeting and all this whole crisis that has happened in Poland has actually took some scheduling of like leaders meeting in Bali very off from the schedule, and earlier morning, like by now, these leaders would have left for a mangrove forest visit, which was nearby Bali, but that seems to be now postponed till the later half of the day. Maybe in the second half of the day, that visit will happen, where all the leaders will be joining them because of the latest and urgent crisis that these 7 members have felt that they need to meet and talk together about this whole situation that has happened in Poland. So clearly, the escalation that is going to happen in Russia-Ukraine war could be very, in some way, very strong statements or strong position or would be coming from the G7 members, and that's going to happen from Bali.
Abhishek, how has this missile attack affected the G20 summit, as there were bilateral talks also which were going to be held today? Prime Minister was going to meet several leaders for bilateral talks. So how is it going to affect those meetings?
Clearly, now since all the G7 leaders are going to have their meetings or the day plan rescheduled, we can have some those that has not been confirmed yet from the Indian side, but we can see some meetings being rescheduled, or maybe some of them can be also postponed because Prime Minister was going to meet Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Starting from him, he had a plan to meet Emmanuel Macron, his president, over the lunch. And then in the second half, he was expected to meet Prime Minister of Italy, Australia, Singapore. But maybe these meetings of your French president can have a hit because of the latest crisis that we are seeing in Poland. And but there has not been confirmation yet. But the sources are telling us that Prime Minister schedule may also be reworked, and whole G20 leaders meetings are being reworked against the crisis in the backdrop of the crisis that we are witnessing in Poland, because we see the leaders are very quick to react on this. Within hours of that news coming in, that Poland, there has been 2 missiles falling in Poland, killing 2 people. And yet, remember that Poland has not confirmed with whether this attack was well intended and against Poland by the Russian side. However, the G7 members are very quick and very, very sharp in their reaction. And we have seen comments made by Rishi Sunak, we have seen comments made by Joe Biden, and that tells the way this crisis is going to pan out in the a few hours or maybe few days to come, because G7 leaders are going to take this case very seriously, and there's going to be some joint statement also coming from the meeting that is scheduled in a few hours from now.
Right, Abhishek. Let's listen into what US President Joe Biden has said on this missile attack that has happened in Poland.
That contests that. I don't want to say that till we completely investigate, but it's unlikely in the lines of the trajectory that it was fired from Russia, but we'll see.
It's unlikely, sir. Mr. President, has Poland suggested invoking Article 4 or 5 from NATO, sir? Down in front, guys. Down in front.
Probably had a meeting of the ambassadors. So that looks like we're going to go to that. Thank you.
Now we have another breaking news coming in. After the missile attack in Poland, now the G20 timings have also been changed. Mangrove's event will now start at around 10:30 a.m. and after that, session 3 and closing session may happen in the beginning. Meanwhile, there's no clarity on the bilateral schedule as of yet that the Prime Minister was going to hold with several political leaders of several countries. My colleague Abhishek Jha to give us more insight. Abhishek.
With this latest crisis and leaders having their priorities to meet on this crisis and discuss how to go about it, because Poland has been a member of NATO, and NATO's primary and founding motto is one for all and all for one. So if the crisis happens in one country, all the member needs to be in solidarity with that one country, one member country. And currently, Poland, though it has yet to be confirmed whether it was attacked from the Russian side to the Poland, but still the crisis is there, and since there is already Russian conflict going on, so probably this incident is not being taken lightly, or there is no chance that NATO wants to leave. There is no room that NATO wants to leave for suspicion. And if this actually comes out as a Russian attack on Poland, then probably we will see a very strong steps being taken from the NATO side. And because the G7 members who are all present in Bali are meeting like a few hours from now. And since their advisors and their senior cabinet colleagues are also present there, so maybe they don't need much of the discussion or the timeline that earlier used to be, because the leaders would have to talk virtually, is not there. So we can see a quick reaction coming from NATO in a very short span of time, because the leaders meeting is going to happen just very shortly from now.
Right, Abhishek. We have some more breaking news coming in. So, US President Joe Biden has said that allies will figure out exactly what happened in Poland. So, after this missile strike that happened in Poland, now US President Joe Biden has reacted on this whole incident and said that the allies will now figure out what exactly happened in Poland. If it was an intentional attack, or it was a missed attack that was supposed to be on Ukraine but mistakenly hit Poland. Time for a short break, but we'll be right back with all the latest updates on the missile attack that happened in Poland.
Here tonight, it's a very special occasion at a very special place. You and all of those watching are the heart and soul of this incredible movement, the greatest country in the history of the world. There's never been anything like it. This great movement of ours, never been anything like it, and perhaps there will never be anything like it again. There's never been anything to compete with what we have all done. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and my fellow citizens, America's comeback starts right now. 2 years ago, when I left office, the United States stood ready for its golden age. Our nation was at the pinnacle of power, prosperity, and prestige, towering above all rivals, vanquishing all enemies, and striding into the future, confident and so strong. In 4 short years, everybody was doing great. Men, women, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, everybody was thriving like never before. There was never a time like this. We turned the page on decades of globalist sellouts and one-sided trade deals, lifted millions out of poverty, and together we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. When the virus hit our shores, I took decisive action and saved lives and the U.S. economy. And by October of the same year, America was roaring back with the #1 fastest economic recovery ever recorded. How about that? All of the incoming administration, and all they had to do was just sit back and watch. Inflation was non-existent. Our southern border was by far the strongest ever. And because the border was so tight, drugs were coming into our country at the lowest level in many, many years. Importantly, after decades of rising energy costs, the United States had finally attained the impossible dream of American energy independence, which soon would have turned into energy dominance. For the first time in memory, China was reeling and back on its heels. You've never seen that before, because the United States was outdoing them on every single front, and China was paying billions and billions of dollars in taxes and tariffs. The farmers know that because they got 28 billion of it. No president had ever sought or received $1 for our country from China until I came along, and we were getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Many people think that because of this, China played a very active role in the 2020 election. Just saying, just saying. Sure, that didn't happen. Instead of jobs and factories leaving America for China, they were for the first time ever leaving China for America. Businesses were pouring back because of our historic tax and regulation cuts, the biggest in both categories in history, bigger even than what Ronald Reagan was able to produce, and he produced a lot. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea were in check and respected. They respected the United States, and quite honestly, they respected me. I knew them well. I knew them well. The vicious ISIS caliphate, which no president was able to conquer, was decimated by me and our great warriors in less than 3 weeks, and al-Baghdadi, its founder, was hunted down and killed. North Korea had not launched a single long-range missile since my summit with Chairman Kim Jong-un nearly 3 years before. We developed a relationship, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Very good thing, actually, because look at what's happening today. My opponents made me out to be a warmonger and just a terrible person who would immediately go into war. They said during the 2016 campaign that if he becomes president, there will never be a war within weeks. And we will have wars like you've never seen before. It will happen immediately. And yet, I've gone decades without a war, the first president to do it for that long a period. The world was at peace, America was prospering, and our country was on track for an amazing future because I made big promises to the American people, and unlike other presidents, I kept my promises. I kept them. Thank you very much. Under our leadership, we were a great and glorious nation, something you haven't heard for quite a long period of time. We were a strong nation, and importantly, we were a free nation. But now we are a nation in decline. We are a failing nation. For millions of Americans, the past 2 years under Joe Biden have been a time of pain, hardship, anxiety, and despair. As we speak, inflation is the highest in over 50 years. Gas prices have reached the highest levels in history and expect them to go much higher now that the strategic national reserves, which I filled up, have been virtually drained in order to keep gasoline prices lower just prior to the election. Joe Biden has intentionally surrendered our energy independence. There is no longer even a thought of dominance, and we are now begging for energy help from foreign nations, many of whom find us detestable. Our southern border has been erased, and our country is being invaded by millions and millions of unknown people, many of whom are entering for a very bad and sinister reason. And you know what that reason is. We will be paying a big price for this invasion into our country for years to come. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of deadly drugs, including very lethal fentanyl, are flooding across the now open and totally porous southern border. The blood-soaked streets of our once great cities are cesspools of violent crimes, which are being watched all over the world as leadership of other countries explain that this is what America and democracy is really all about. How sad. The United States has been embarrassed, humiliated, and weakened for all to see. The disasters in Afghanistan, perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, where we lost lives, left Americans behind, and surrendered $85 billion worth of the finest military equipment anywhere in the world. And Ukraine, which would have never happened if I were your president, are something and even the Democrats admit that. That's something I've seen them admit over and over again. But our enemies are speaking of us with scorn and laughter and derision because of those two events. But there are many more. Even just today, a missile was sent in, probably by Russia, to Poland, 50 miles into Poland. And people are going absolutely wild and crazy, and they're not happy. They're very, very angry. Now we have a president who falls asleep at global conferences, was held in contempt by the British Parliament over Afghanistan. Thanks to the words of wisdom, he said thank you to the wrong country for inviting him to a major summit on the environment of all things. They fly for days to get there, and then he calls the country a name that was actually a country on another continent. And he's leading us to the brink of nuclear war, a concept unimaginable just 2 short years ago. You cannot mention the nuclear word. It's too devastating. The Green New Deal and the environment, which they say may affect us in 300 years, is all that is talked about, and yet nuclear weapons, which would destroy the world immediately, are never even discussed as a major threat. Can you imagine? They say the ocean will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 200 to 300 years. But don't worry about nuclear weapons that can take out entire countries with one shot. Something is wrong with their thinking. Under Biden and the radical Democrats, America has been mocked, derided, and brought to its knees, perhaps like never before. But we are here tonight to declare that it does not have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. Two years ago, we were a great nation, and soon we will be a great nation again. The decline of America is being forced upon us by Biden and the radical left lunatics running our government right into the ground. This decline is not a fate we must accept. When given the choice, boldly, clearly, and directly, I believe the American people will overwhelmingly reject the left's platform of national ruin, and they will embrace our platform of national greatness and glory to America. Glory. Exactly 1 week ago, our citizens voted in the important midterm elections, and despite a ridiculously long and unnecessary period of waiting, far longer, in fact, than any third world country, just a short time ago, the Republicans won back control of the House of Representatives. And it was with a great Trump-endorsed candidate, Congressman-elect Kevin Kiley, who is a fantastic person, and I'm very happy it was his vote that did it. But we now won back. This happened just an hour ago. Much criticism is being placed on the fact that the Republican Party should have done better, and frankly, much of this blame is correct. But the citizens of our country have not yet realized the full extent and gravity of the pain our nation is going through, and the total effect of the suffering is just starting to take hold. They don't quite feel it yet, but they will very soon. I have no doubt that by 2024, it will sadly be much worse, and they will see much more clearly what happened and what is happening to our country, and the voting will be much different. 2024. Are you getting ready? And I am too. I am too. I do want to point out that in the midterms, my endorsement success rate was 232 wins and only 22 losses. You don't hear that from the media. And this is an elegant night and an elegant place, and I'm not going to use the term fake news media. So we're going to keep it very elegant. But you don't hear that from the media. But I think you will, because people are starting to see what happened. That's some score. And in the primaries was 98.6%. But they were still trying to blame me. And the reason for the success and that unprecedented success rate is that the Trump administration changed our nation on trade, on securing the border. We're the strongest, safest border ever in the history of our country. On Islamic terrorism, we had practically, just about, not that I can think of, no Islamic attacks, terrorist attacks during the Trump administration. And in fact, we got along very well with the various countries, including coming up with the Abraham Accords. It's a great thing, the Abraham Accords. but it's because of cutting taxes and cutting regulations at the highest level ever, and on building the greatest economy. Any time in the history of the world, there's never been an economy like we had just 2 years ago. Despite the outcome in the Senate, we cannot lose hope, and we must all work very hard for a gentleman and a great person named Herschel Walker, a fabulous human being who loves our country and will be a great United States Senator. Herschel Walker, get out and vote for Herschel, and he deserves it. He was an incredible athlete. He'll be an even better senator. Get out and vote for Herschel Walker. We elected a group of incredibly talented America First leaders who will be stars of our party for many years to come. In the popular vote, another thing that's not discussed for the House, we must remember that Republicans won 5 million more votes, the largest margin in many, many years, over the Democrats. 5 million more votes, that's a big thing. Breaking the radical Democrats' grip on Congress was crucial. So in other words, because of our great congressmen and all of our great congressmen and congresswomen, we have taken over Congress. Nancy Pelosi has been fired. Isn't that I told them, I said, if you just keep a little bit lower standard, you're going to have a big victory. They said, let's win by 40 seats. Let's win by 50. I said, if you win by 2 seats, be happy. But she's on her way to another country right now. She's been fired. But we always have known that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of our fight to rescue the American dream. And it's a word you don't use, 2 words. I don't want to be Joe. It's 2 words, American dream. That was not good what he did. There are a lot of bad things, like going to Idaho and saying, welcome to the state of Florida. I really love it. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. So many incredible friends and family here tonight. It's such a beautiful thing. Some people say, how do you speak before so many people all the time? When there's love in the room, it's really easy, if you want to know the truth. Really, you ought to try it sometime. Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's happened with Hispanic, with African American, with Asian, and just look at what's happening. This is a party that has become much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful, can do much more good for our country. This is a job for grandmothers and construction workers, firefighters, builders, teachers, doctors, and farmers who cannot stay quiet any longer. You can't stay quiet any longer. You're angry about what's happening to our country. Our country is being destroyed before your very eyes. It's a job for every aspiring young person and every hard-working parent, for every entrepreneur and underappreciated police officer who is ready to shout for safety in America. The police are being treated so badly. These are great people. They can straighten out the crime. They're the ones that know how to do it. We have to give them back their respect and their dignity. This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together. Because the only force strong enough to defeat the massive corruption we are up against is you, the American people. It's true. The American people, the greatest people on earth, we love them all. And we love both sides. We're going to bring people together. We're going to unify people. And it was happening in the previous administration, previous to the previous. And what was bringing them together was success. Prior to COVID coming in, the people were calling me, that were calling me. You wouldn't believe it. People that were so far left, I figured they'd never speak to me and I would never speak to them. But our success was so incredible, like never before. And then COVID started coming in from China. We call it the China virus. Some people call it other things. But it was devastating, and we built it back and did an incredible job. But when people say Republicans or Democrats or liberals or conservatives, I say we can all get together. And we were doing that. That was happening just prior, because the success was greater than this country has ever had. We were leapfrogging China and leapfrogging everybody else, and everybody wanted a piece of it. But just as I promised in 2016, I am your voice. I am your voice. The Washington establishment wants to silence us, but we will not let them do that. What we have built together over the past 6 years is the greatest movement in history, because it is not about politics. It's about our love for this great country, America, and we're not going to let it fail. I am running because I believe the world has not yet seen the true glory of what this nation can be. We have not reached that pinnacle, believe it or not. In fact, we can go very far. We're going to have to go far. First, we have to get out of this ditch. And once we're out, you'll see things that...
A car rammed into a motorcycle rider in Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal district. The police have launched an investigation into the matter.
A heart-wrenching video has surfaced from Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal. The footage shows an uncontrollable car ramming into the motorcycle rider. The entire incident was caught on CCTV camera. The video shows a motorcycle rider being hit hard by a car and then dragged for a few meters before getting up immediately. Despite the horrific incident, the motorcyclist had suffered minor injuries. After the video went viral on social media, the police has launched an investigation into the entire matter.
Meanwhile, thousands of CPIM workers protested against Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan. The party protested till the Raj Bhavan. In fact, the ruling CPIM and the governor have been at loggerheads over allegations of nepotism by government officials in the appointment of vice-chancellors to universities. The issue intensified after the Supreme Court annulled the appointment of a vice-chancellor of one of the technical universities in Kerala.
The Left Democratic Front has taken out a protest march from outside the museum compound to Raj Bhavan, protesting against the stand taken by Kerala Governor. Hundreds of workers have gathered here under the LDF. All their allies, the CPM, CPI, all of them are taking part in this. They have said that it is a higher education protection Samadi that has taken out this march.
The tussle between Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan and Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. In fact, Arif Muhammad Khan has alleged that all appointments in state universities are illegal. He further went on to say that the LDF government thinks that the university and properties are our party cadre and that of relatives. The governor even commented on the protest and said that the government cannot pressurize him.
Research in Kerala universities has come to a standstill. Why? Because bright students of Kerala, they do not want to stay in Kerala. So much party politics, so much interference in the universities, they go safely to some other place. They do not come to the Raj Bhavan. Do you hope they will come to the... Because they themselves know that what they are doing is not in accordance with law.
UP police SUV has hit toddlers who were crossing the road in Uttar Pradesh's Bagpat. The video has gone viral on social media.
2 children were hit by a vehicle on a busy street in Bagpat district of Uttar Pradesh. A viral video footage of the event shows a vehicle charging in and striking the 2 youngsters as they crossed the street. The kids were taken straight to the hospital and the treatment is underway. The vehicle turned out to be a police response vehicle. The vehicle that hit turned out to be a police response vehicle. The footage shows bystanders rushing to help children right after the car hit. According to the authorities, children have received minor injuries and are no longer in danger.
NASA is finally moving forward with the Artemis 1 moon mission. The project got delayed post the rocket getting plagued with leaks as well as damage from Hurricane Nicole. But after repairs, it's all set to be launched tomorrow morning.
NASA says it's on track for the Artemis 1 mission to launch Wednesday. That could pave the way for US astronauts to return to the moon. The launch of NASA's most powerful rocket ever, which is carrying the uncrewed Orion spacecraft, is targeting a 2-hour window for liftoff, beginning at 1:04 a.m. Eastern Time Wednesday. That's if all goes to plan. Previous launches have been scrubbed because of bad weather and technical issues. NASA says the mission is still ready to go, even though the mega rocket sustained some minor damage after Hurricane Nicole swept across Florida last week. If and when Artemis gets off the ground, it has some lofty goals. The first mission is expected to be a 25-day journey to the moon's orbit and back. Artemis 2 repeats the trip, including astronauts and a lunar flyby. Artemis 3 plans to put astronauts back on the moon's surface.
Tennis star Novak Djokovic will be playing the Australian Open after being granted a visa. The Australian government had decided to grant the unvaccinated Serb a visa for the Grand Slam. This year's championship was overshadowed by the 9-time Australian Open champion, who was sent back on the eve of the contest after a high-stakes legal battle over his visa status. Australia's New South Wales is reeling under heavy rains. Hundreds of homes have been inundated in and around the city following powerful storms overnight. Hundreds of residents were also rescued with the help of helicopters and boats.
Houses, highways, bridges, farms, everything is underwater. Torrential rains are wreaking havoc in Australia's New South Wales. More than 200 flood rescue operations were conducted in the state over the past 24 hours. This after weeks of record rainfall have caused widespread flooding across parts of eastern Australia. According to officials, no fatalities have been reported so far. Authorities have also issued an evacuation order for the town of Forbes, which was hit by flooding 2 weeks ago. It is the 4th major flood which has hit eastern Australia this year.
A video of a speeding Tesla killing 2 people, including a schoolgirl in China, that's put the car's safety record in question. The accident was caught on camera and it's been widely shared on social media.
2 people, including a schoolgirl, were crushed to death in China after a Tesla ran over them. The horror was caught on CCTV and the video has gone viral on social media. The footage shows the driver allegedly losing control of the vehicle while trying to park it, and then rammed into a motorcyclist and a high school girl. The incident took place in the first week of November in China's southern province of Guangdong. Following the incident, Tesla told Reuters that it will assist the local authorities in investigating the truth behind the accident. China is Tesla's second largest market, and the video of the fatal crash was among the top trending videos on the Weibo social media platform.
Prime Minister Modi attended an event for the Indian community in Bali in Indonesia. While addressing the gathering there, Prime Minister Modi said that New Delhi is leading from the front and is a ray of hope in what is an increasingly complex geopolitical world in the 21st century.
इंडोनेशिया से सीखने के लिए भारत के पास बहुत कुछ है और अपनी 75 वर्षों की विकास यात्रा से भारत के पास भी इंडोनेशिया को देने के लिए बहुत कुछ है। विश्व की अनगिनत कंपनियां ऐसी हैं, कई बड़ी कंपनियां ऐसी हैं जिसके सीईओ भारतीय मूल के हैं।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden, their bonhomie, was on full display at the G20 summit in Bali. President Biden, in fact, walked up to Prime Minister Modi and shared a warm hug at the summit.
Two global superpowers, two world leaders, and a warm exchange. US President Joe Biden walked up to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and shook hands at the G20 summit. This happened before they took their seats and sat right next to each other at the summit. Video shows Prime Minister Modi at first appears to have missed seeing President Biden approaching him, but then turns around quickly for a handshake and gives him a hug. PM Modi also shared some light moments as President Biden proceeded to his seat. Prime Minister Modi also met French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at the summit.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi also met with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 dinner that was hosted by Indonesian President Joko Widodo. It was the first meeting between these two gentlemen since the Galwan clash in June of 2020. A court in Delhi granted bail to Bollywood actor Jacqueline Fernandez in the 200 crore money laundering case, which also involves conman Sukesh Chandrasekhar. Last week, the court deferred the order on the bail plea of the actor, extended her interim protection up until today. Jacqueline had sought bail on grounds that there was no need for her custody since the investigation is already complete and the charge sheet has been filed.
You've secured this bail order. First of all, reaction.
We are grateful and we bow down to the Honorable Courts. We laid down the law laid by the Honorable Supreme Court. We relied upon it. If you look at the conduct of Jacqueline, she has always been cooperating with the investigating agencies. It has never been a case that she has not cooperated because she attended all the summons and she deposited all the documents. She cooperated with the investigation and which was then recorded by the Honorable Court, and this may have gone in her favor to grant bail.
Congress leader Rahul Gandhi slammed the BJP today on the occasion of tribal freedom fighter Birsa Munda's birth anniversary. Rahul Gandhi said the tribals are the original owners of the country and their rights come first before anyone else. Gandhi also alleged that the ideals of Birsa Munda were being attacked by the BJP and RSS.
एक तरफ से नहीं हो रहा है, चारों तरफ से उनकी सोच पर, उनकी यादगाश पर आरएसएस और बीजेपी आक्रमण कर रहे हैं। बीजेपी के लोग कहते हैं नहीं भैया, आप आदिवासी नहीं हो, आप वनवासी हो।
An 18-year-old footballer in Chennai died because of multiple organ failure following medical negligence by doctors at a government hospital. Priya was being treated for a ligament tear at the government-run peripheral hospital where she was forced to undergo a leg amputation at the Rajiv Gandhi Hospital for further treatment. The health department has also suspended 2 doctors and 10 lakhs compensation has been ordered.
Treatment was planned yesterday. Before that, she had developed myoglobin. When there is a muscle necrosis, the myoglobin will be released, which is excreted through the kidney. When it gets excreted through the kidney, normally the kidney gets damaged, so which resulted in renal failure. Subsequently, liver also got affected, and then the heart also got affected. But despite of all these efforts, the morning around 7:15, she passed away.
A group of residents in Vasant Kunj in Delhi in a residential society took to the streets and staged a massive protest against the Delhi Jal Board. Residents were frustrated over erratic water supply and persistent water crisis. The agitated residents, including women and the elderly, protested holding empty buckets in their hands. Meanwhile, senior officials said that the issue will be resolved within 2 days and teams have been deployed to address this.
6 दिन से 24 घंटे इस उम्र में मुझे पानी के लिए दौड़ना पड़ रहा है। कभी कभी पानी अगर आता है तो इतना गंदा आता है, इतना स्टिंक करता है, आप बताइए कितना है हमारे हेल्थ को खराब करेगा। अब 6 दिन से पानी नहीं है, कोई सुनने वाला नहीं।
टैंकर्स नहीं भेज पा रहे हैं, जो टैंकर्स आ रहे हैं वो कुछ लोगों को दे रहे हैं, सबको नहीं दे पा रहे। सेकेंडली, टैंकर्स के पास पाइप्स नहीं है। अब हर इंसान यहाँ पाइप नहीं खरीद सकता ना।
A car rammed into a motorcycle rider in Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal district. The police have launched an investigation into the matter.
A heart-wrenching video has surfaced from Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal. The footage shows an uncontrollable car ramming into the motorcycle rider. The entire incident was caught on CCTV camera. The video shows a motorcycle rider being hit hard by a car and then dragged for a few meters before getting up immediately. Despite the horrific incident, the motorcyclist had suffered minor injuries. After the video went viral on social media, the police has launched an investigation into the entire matter.
Meanwhile, thousands of CPIM workers protested against Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan. The party protested till the Raj Bhavan. In fact, the ruling CPIM and the governor have been at loggerheads over allegations of nepotism by government officials in the appointment of vice-chancellors to universities. The issue intensified after the Supreme Court annulled the appointment of a vice-chancellor of one of the technical universities in Kerala.
The Left Democratic Front has taken out a protest march from outside the museum compound to Raj Bhavan, protesting against the stand taken by Kerala governor. Hundreds of workers have gathered here under the LDF. All their allies, the CPM, CPI, all of them are taking part in this. They have said that it is a higher education protection Samadi that has taken out this march.
The tussle between Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan and Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. In fact, Arif Muhammad Khan has alleged that all appointments in state universities are illegal. He further went on to say that the LDF government thinks that the university and properties are our party cadre and that of relatives. The governor even commented on the protest and said that the government cannot pressurize him.
Research in Kerala universities has come to a standstill. Why? Because bright students of Kerala, they do not want to stay in Kerala. So much party politics, so much interference in the universities, they go safely to some other place. They do not come to the Raj Bhavan. Do you hope they will come to the... Because they themselves know that what they are doing is not in accordance with law.
UP police SUV has hit toddlers who were crossing the road in Uttar Pradesh's Bagpat. The video has gone viral on social media.
2 children were hit by a vehicle on a...
calm down the climate change crisis that we are witnessing in the past several years. This is why this location or this visit has been chosen to, in a way, to tell the world that how importance is being given to this whole climate talk, and Indonesia is also having one of the richest and diverse natural habitats. And in Bali, this mangrove forest is very near to the location where Nusa Dua, where this whole event is happening, is like almost 20 kilometers away from this place, situated alongside the sea coastline. Leaders will be visiting this place. The Indonesian President Joko Widodo has been welcoming all of them. And just now we saw Prime Minister Modi also reaching at the venue.
All right, Abhishek, I'd like you to stay with us because I also want to bring in our guest who is live with us on the broadcast, Mr. Pathikrit Payne, who is a geopolitical analyst as well as a security analyst. Mr. Payne, thank you so much for speaking to CNN News 18 as we cover the G20 events today. What I wanted to ask you about was, considering the incident in Poland, the schedule of the G20 events that were happening today has completely changed. What do you think about this?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
All right, we'll try to re-establish the audio with that guest. I'm going to cross back over to our foreign affairs correspondent, Abhishek Jha. Abhishek, tell us more about the schedule that has changed today. What are we likely to see happen next and over the next couple of hours, considering the situation in Poland?
Situation in Poland clearly has its implications on the G20 summit, because we are getting reports and our sources are telling us that there has been a lot of rescheduling being worked around because today was going to be the last day of the Leaders Summit, and there was one session also which was scheduled in the later second half of the day. But now, with the G7 leaders having a call for an urgent meeting, some bilateral meetings have been cancelled. One of them was also with the Japanese Prime Minister and between Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, because they are part of G7, and so probably they will have a more urgent issue to address with this latest incident in Poland that has happened. President Biden was also present there. So all of the G7 leaders who are part of also G20 were present here with the senior advisor and ministers. And so this whole issue of Poland has taken a very massive impact on G20. however, the scheduled mangrove forest visit is also happening. We'll have to wait for the confirmation from our Minister of External Affairs people whether Prime Minister Modi's all scheduled bilateral meetings will be on time or not, because Prime Minister was expected to meet French President Emmanuel Macron on the lunch, and later in the day he was also scheduled to meet the Prime Ministers of Italy, Australia, Spain. So how in the light of the latest incident that has happened, and the priorities of the world leaders being changed and shifted to other agencies, whether these scheduled talks will happen or not, we don't know yet. But we'll have to wait for the day to progress. And also, there is a reported joint communique that is expected to be released few hours from now, where all the leaders will have a consensus of the current issues that they have deliberated, and what could be the way forward and how to deal with them. What could be the what are the challenges, what are the key concerns, and what could be the best possible solution of the current crisis. So this is the kind of joint communique that we are expecting. But having said that, the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, has already left from Bali to Moscow. He was there for 1 day, where he has took part in the first day session of the G20 Leaders Summit. But we'll have to see, because the declaration needs to be signed by all the leaders, and there has to be a joint and unanimous, consensus on those issues and those drafts that are being made. So we don't know yet whether Russians have already agreed upon the draft, or the communique that is going to be out in the second half of the day, or whether the draft will come at all. Because it times also happen, because if there is no consensus, the draft may not come. So, but Indonesian president and Joko Widodo has been trying his hard to bring all the leaders on to some issues where they can actually agree upon for the futuristic or solutions of the current crisis.
All right, Abhishek, I would like you to stay with us. I also want to bring in Pathikrit Payne, a geopolitical analyst and security analyst. Mr. Payne, thank you so much for speaking to CNN News 18. What I wanted to ask you about were your views on the Prime Minister yesterday. He had met with China's President Xi Jinping at the gala dinner. How do you see that exchange?
Well, I think it was more of a customary, courtesy exchange of greetings between two heads of state in a large congregation and an important congregation like G20. It's a good thing that it has happened, but it doesn't change anything on the ground so far as the issues related to LAC is concerned, or other major issues between India and China are concerned. It's a positive step in the right direction, I would say, because if you look at what happened in Samarkand during the BRICS summit, I think there was still quite a bit of coldness between the two. From that time onward, if this, even if it's a customary exchange of greetings, I think it's good. And I think it also, perhaps not by default, there has been certain amount of planning behind it. But again, I repeat, it doesn't mean that neither side, probably India, is not going to compromise on anything. So far as those strict stands are concerned, it's going to stay like that. Even then, two heads of state going in a major congregation like G20, not talking at all to each other and passing silently by each other, would have been even more bad. Compared to that, I think once they have exchanged greetings, even if it's customary, I think at least from the perspective of volatility all around, I think it's a positive step in the right direction.
All right, Mr. Payne, do stay with us. I also want to bring in our guest, Ambassador Suresh Goel, who is a former diplomat. Mr. Goel, thank you so much for speaking with CNN News 18. What I wanted to ask you about was the fact that India is going to be taking over the presidency of the G20. We will be hosting it next year. How do you think this is going to boost our position on the global platform?
Well, obviously, India as a large emerging economy, developing economy, and growing faster, India does have a very influential voice on the global stage. Clearly, at this G20 meeting in Bali, by calling for ceasefire, by calling for a solution to Ukraine, by highlighting the key issues, India has been able to establish a position which will be very useful for its next presidency. I would think that under the presidency of India, certain issues which are here would continue to grapple the world attention. The situation in Indo-Pacific is not going to go away. China will remain there as an issue to deal with. Ukraine war looks like a long-drawn thing. Most of the issues that the Biden is facing would continue under our presidency, and the kind of stature that India has acquired and Prime Minister Modi has acquired should be very helpful in dealing with these issues over the next 1 year.
All right, thank you so much for that response, Mr. Goel. Now, I also want to cross back over to Mr. Pathikrit Payne. Mr. Payne, can you tell us what you think the Prime Minister should really be highlighting when it comes to the bilaterals that are expected to take place today?
Well, I think, one of the most important things would be how India has, surpassed many of the major colossal challenges that the world has faced over the last 2 years. In fact, a lot of countries have a lot of interest in the way India has gone for a rupee settlement scheme, in the manner in which it has been successful in driving the vaccination program. It has been able to have industrial scale, production of vaccines and it has administered more than 200 crore vaccines to its own eligible population, has also given vaccine to more than 70 odd countries. The manner in which, in spite of all the challenges all around, the manner in which the Indian economy has emerged as the fifth largest economy and has continued to be the fastest growing economy among the large economies, with a very healthy foreign exchange reserve in spite of massive challenges of a huge surge in the price of commodities in the international market. I think a lot of countries will be interested into knowing all these things. But I think one of the biggest pitch that the Prime Minister would also make is the Make in India program, in which he would be asking countries to invest in India. And if you look at the kind of challenges that many of the companies are facing in China right now because of the zero COVID policy, many of them might be interested in looking at other destinations. I think Prime Minister would also talk about the number of structural reforms that has been done in terms of improving infrastructure, productivity in the economy, or GST, Insolvency Bankruptcy Code Act, reducing the corporate tax rates, National Logistics Policy, Project Gati Shakti, and how they actually would benefit foreign investors if they come and invest in the Indian economy. He would also talk about how India's initiatives have been in the realm of renewable energy, whether it's you talk about the International Solar Alliance, which of course a lot of countries already know, all the efforts being taken by Government of India in collaboration with the private sector in the realm of green hydrogen and making it a viable fuel alternative. They would also be interested to know the Indian scenario in terms of how the situation would emerge in the next few years. Because if you look at the volatility all around, probably India remains one of the very few countries in the world which is still in talking terms, both with Russia and the West, and maintains good relation. And yet India has been successful in having an assertive diplomacy of its own in terms of going ahead and buying fuel from energy requirements from Russia and weapons also, systems also. So in some way, India has become the voice of many of those countries which were finding it very difficult to accept the Western dictums, but were a little scared and apprehensive to take a stand against the United States. The manner in which Prime Minister Modi and the External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, has charted India's independent foreign policy, I think that has become a benchmark for many other countries. So it's a whole gamut of things on which discussions would invariably happen. But if you talk about the concrete things, invariably the Prime Minister would pitch for what the Government of India has done to make India as a viable and a very attractive destination so far as Make in India program is concerned.
Absolutely, Mr. Payne. Now, Mr. Goel, my next question is for you. Do you think it's likely that China will attend the G20 session that takes place in India next year? Or do you think there's a chance that China will stay away?
It's a very difficult question because a lot really depends upon developments before the meeting in India and other things. But I do think that Xi Jinping would attend the meeting simply because it does provide a stage to him to put its point of view across at a time when growing number of countries, particularly in the West, are wary of its assertive policies in all over the world. In fact, the connectivity projects are really a ruse for its extension of its own influence across in Europe and Africa, BRI, etc. Most of the countries have reservations, particularly about its program in regarding to Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Therefore, China does look to a global stage, particularly where it can open a dialogue process, can talk to the developed countries in a multilateral setting without making it look like a bilateral effort. So I think it would. It probably would, but it all depends upon more developments before the meeting takes place.
All right. Now, I also want to bring in our managing editor, Zaka Jacob, who's joining us on the line to get us more. Zaka, over to you.
Yeah, so I think day two of the Bali G20 will be completely overshadowed by the developments in Poland. We had an emergency meeting of the G7 earlier today. There's going to be a meeting of NATO under Article 4 upon request from the Polish authorities. So far, the only mitigating factor seems to be that Joe Biden, in very brief comments to the press, said that he doesn't think, at least from the initial reports, that the trajectory of this missile came from Russia. So if that were the case, and if it was likely that this was a Ukrainian air defense system that was fired in response to the barrage of Russian missiles that attacked Ukraine overnight, I think in about 15 odd places across Ukraine, there were major missile strikes. So if this was likely a response by Ukrainian air defenses to try and thwart or to subvert that attack, and that accidentally strayed on to Poland, then I guess the response from NATO will be different. But if the determination that they come to at the end of this investigation, which the Polish authorities will do, and Biden has said that they're going to wait for the results of that investigation before announcing their next steps, if that investigation does find that the missile was actually launched from Russia, and whether it accidentally strayed onto Ukraine or whether it was with the deliberate intent to hit Poland, that I think would definitely change the nature of the response by NATO. As you're well aware, Chapter 5 of NATO clearly mandates that an attack on one is an attack on all. So we're literally on a razor's edge right now until the Polish authorities can come to a definitive conclusion on where this missile was launched from and what was the intent behind the launch of this missile. I think until we come to that determination, there is going to be a lot of tension in the air, both in Bali as well as across the Atlantic in the US as well as in Europe, because they need to come to a conclusion on what this attack was, whether it was fired from Russia and with what intent. And depending on the nature of that, of the result of that investigation, I think things will move forward. But clearly, things have escalated. There is a sense of tension in Bali as well. Like I said, day two of the G20 Bali will be dominated by the developments in Poland. Everyone keeping an eye out on this. So like I said, emergency meetings have already happened. There will be more in the offing throughout the day today. And in the middle of all of this, you also have a domestic story breaking in the U.S., but Donald Trump deciding to run again. So a lot on the plate of the U.S. President Joe Biden right now. And if you look at the pictures that are coming in from the mangroves, he seems very quiet. He seems sort of aloof from the rest of the pack. The others seem to be chatting away. They are in a more talkative mood, if you will. But Joe Biden, at least from the one picture that seemed to come out from that mangrove, he seemed to be cut away from the rest of them in a rather somber and reflective mood. So a lot will depend on him and how he chooses to respond to this attack by Russia. Clearly, it was a Russian-made missile. Whether it was Russia that deliberately fired this, that we haven't come to a conclusion yet. So I think a lot will depend in Bali G20 Day 2 on the developments in Poland.
Absolutely, Zaka. Very crucial perspective there coming in from our managing editor. Now, thank you so much for speaking to us about this. We have some breaking news coming in right now, so we're shifting focus to that. Now, hours after the Modi-Sunak meeting, UK has green-lighted 3,000 visas for Indian nationals. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has given the go-ahead to a scheme that offers 3,000 visas for young professionals from India to work in the UK each year. The scheme will provide 18 to 30-year-old degree-educated Indian nationals a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take part in a professional and cultural exchange. Now, this is according to 10 Downing Street. The reciprocal route will open in early 2023. I'm crossing over to our foreign affairs correspondent Abhishek Jha to get us more on this. Abhishek, how do you see this new development with the green lighting of 3,000 visas to Indian nationals?
So this is in the direction of people-to-people exchange and making it more stronger. We know that India and UK already have a lot of diaspora connect, and also a lot of the students also go to UK for education. But then there is a young generation of professionals also who opt and explore opportunities in UK. And there is same way of looking forwardness from Britons also who want to come to India and explore India as a cultural place, as a place for education, or maybe place for work also. So in that direction, these 3,000 visas will help boost that cultural and educational exchanges and professional exchanges as well, where companies operating in India and UK can have their professionals cross over to each other's places and then work with their teams on that space. And this is going to be a reciprocation because now UK has announced this thing, and India is going to do the same 3,000 visa, allowing 3,000 UK citizens to come to India for their cultural
All right,
work
Abhishek,
or
sorry, we're
training
short
work.
on time. Very crucial points that you're bringing in, but we have to head into a very short break. Do stay with us.
You've secured this bail order. For small reaction.
We are grateful and we bow down to the Honorable Courts. We laid down the law laid by the Honorable Supreme Court. We relied upon it. If you look at the conduct of Jacqueline, she has always been cooperating with the investigating agencies. It has never been a case that she has not cooperated because she attended all the summons and she deposited all the documents. She cooperated with the investigation and which was then recorded by the Honorable Court. And this may have gone in her favor to grant bail.
Congress leader Rahul Gandhi slammed the BJP today on the occasion of tribal freedom fighter Birsa Munda's birth anniversary. Rahul Gandhi said the tribals are the original owners of the country and their rights come first before anyone else. Gandhi also alleged that the ideals of Birsa Munda were being attacked by the BJP and RSS.
एक तरफ से नहीं हो रहा है, चारों तरफ से उनकी सोच पर, उनकी यादगाश पर आरएसएस और बीजेपी आक्रमण कर रहे हैं। बीजेपी के लोग कहते हैं नहीं भैया, आप आदिवासी नहीं हो, आप वनवासी हो।
An 18-year-old footballer in Chennai died because of multiple organ failure following medical negligence by doctors at a government hospital. Priya was being treated for a ligament tear at the government-run peripheral hospital where she was forced to undergo a leg amputation at the Rajiv Gandhi Hospital for further treatment. The health department has also suspended 2 doctors and 10 lakhs compensation has been ordered.
Treatment was planned yesterday. Before that, she had developed myoglobin. When there is a muscle necrosis, the myoglobin will be released, which is excreted through the kidney. When it gets excreted through the kidney, normally the kidney gets damaged, so which resulted in renal failure. Subsequently, liver also got affected, and then the heart also got affected. But despite of all these efforts, the morning around 7:15, she passed away.
A group of residents in Vasant Kunj in Delhi in a residential society took to the streets and staged a massive protest against the Delhi Jal Board. Residents were frustrated over erratic water supply and persistent water crisis. The agitated residents, including women and the elderly, protested holding empty buckets in their hands. Meanwhile, senior officials said that the issue will be resolved within 2 days and teams have been deployed to address this.
6 दिन से 24 घंटे इस उम्र में मुझे पानी के लिए दौड़ना पड़ रहा है। कभी कभी पानी अगर आता है तो इतना गंदा आता है, इतना स्टिंक करता है, आप बताइए कितना है हमारे हेल्थ को खराब करेगा। अब 6 दिन से पानी नहीं है, कोई सुनने वाला नहीं।
टैंकर्स नहीं भेज पा रहे हैं, जो टैंकर्स आ रहे हैं वो कुछ लोगों को दे रहे हैं, सबको नहीं दे पा रहे। सेकेंडली, टैंकर्स के पास पाइप्स नहीं है। अब हर इंसान यहाँ पाइप नहीं खरीद सकता ना।
A car rammed into a motorcycle rider in Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal district. The police have launched an investigation into the matter.
A heart-wrenching video has surfaced from Uttar Pradesh's Sambhal. The footage shows an uncontrollable car ramming into the motorcycle rider. The entire incident was caught on CCTV camera. The video shows a motorcycle rider being hit hard by a car and then dragged for a few meters before getting up immediately. Despite the horrific incident, the motorcyclist had suffered minor injuries. After the video went viral on social media, the police has launched an investigation into the entire matter.
Welcome back. Former Republican President Donald Trump says he's launching another White House bid for 2024. Now, he says, and I quote, "In order to make America great and glorious again, I am announcing my candidacy for President of the United States." Now, Trump's long-awaited campaign comes as the former president tries to reclaim the spotlight following the GOP's underwhelming midterm election performance, including the losses of several Trump-endorsed election deniers and the subsequent blame game that has unfolded since Election Day. We are being joined by CNN's Juan Carlos Lopez on this story. Juan, thank you so much for speaking to us. What I wanted to ask you is, what is the mood of the Republican Party where Trump is concerned?
Well, good evening from D.C. We can say that the Republican Party is in certain disarray. They had expected big victories in the Senate and the House of Representatives. They didn't materialize even after polls and pundits had predicted that that would be the case, but it didn't happen. They couldn't hold on. They couldn't recover the Senate. The Democrats were able to hold on to it. And in the House of Representatives, they will have a very thin margin. And now they have to deal with Donald Trump announcing he is looking for the candidacy, filing papers with the Federal Electoral Commission. So there is a very big fight inside of the Republican Party because they're not sure about what the future will bring, and they're still recovering from this very lackluster result in the past election.
And how big a role will Florida Governor Ron DeSantis play in the Republican Party in 2024?
It's going to be very interesting. Now, remember, Ron DeSantis won the governorship in Florida by a very small margin, about 37,000 votes, but he's become a very strong figure in the conservative movement. Now, he won very big in Florida, but if you look at the candidates that he traveled to support in other states, they all lost. So right now, it's still an enigma if Ron DeSantis will be a candidate that has that wide support at the national level, or is it that he was able to turn Florida into a very conservative state? Donald Trump has been attacking him directly, and that's going to be another question we'll see an answer to. Donald Trump has easily dealt with candidates who have dared oppose him. He considers, and he says publicly, that he made Ron DeSantis, that Ron DeSantis owes him, and his goal is probably to try to push Ron DeSantis out of the way. But Ron DeSantis isn't answering to Trump's attacks, and apparently has a strategy to deal with the former president, now candidate, or at least looking for the candidacy, because we have to highlight that Donald Trump is not the candidate of the Republican Party for the presidency in 2024. He wants to be the candidate, but he's going to have to face primaries, and that's still a long time away.
Absolutely. Now, what is the status of the January 6th hearings when it comes to Trump?
Well, there are different scenarios. First, we have the January 6th committee, and now that Republicans will recover the House, very likely it will be disbanded come January when the new legislature comes into play. But there will be a report that will be filed before year's end. But there's another aspect to that investigation, and that has to do with the Department of Justice. Now, the committee has said that they could, but they probably won't recommend that the Department of Justice file charges. But there is a parallel investigation going on at the Department of Justice. The question is if Attorney General Merrick Garland will file charges against Donald Trump as a candidate, or if he will designate a special investigator to deal with that issue. So there are two different tracks. The congressional investigation is more of a political nature, and it's expected to end at the end of this year. But there could be files charged against him amongst the many different legal processes he is facing both for his political actions and also for his family businesses.
Absolutely, Juan. Thank you so much for speaking to us about this now and for joining us from Washington, D.C. and telling us more about this perspective when it comes to Trump's bid for the 2024 elections. Now, with this, we're heading into a very short break, but do stay with us.
2 weeks ago. It is the fourth major flood which has hit eastern Australia this year.
A video of a speeding Tesla killing 2 people, including a schoolgirl in China, that's put the car's safety record in question. The accident was caught on camera and it's been widely shared on social media.
2 people, including a schoolgirl, were crushed to death in China after a Tesla ran over them. The horror was caught on CCTV and the video has gone viral on social media. The footage shows the driver allegedly losing control of the vehicle while trying to park it and then rammed into a motorcyclist and a high school girl. The incident took place in the first week of November in China's southern province of Guangdong. Following the incident, Tesla told Reuters that it will assist the local authorities in investigating the truth behind the accident. China is Tesla's second largest market, and the video of the fatal crash was among the top trending videos on the Weibo social media platform.
Prime Minister Modi attended an event for the Indian community in Bali in Indonesia. While addressing the gathering there, Prime Minister Modi said that New Delhi is leading from the front and is a ray of hope in what is an increasingly complex geopolitical world in the 21st century.
इंडोनेशिया से सीखने के लिए भारत के पास बहुत कुछ है और अपनी 75 वर्षों की विकास यात्रा से भारत के पास भी इंडोनेशिया को देने के लिए बहुत कुछ है। विश्व की अनगिनत कंपनियां ऐसी हैं, कई बड़ी कंपनियां ऐसी हैं जिसके सीईओ भारतीय मूल के हैं।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden, their bonhomie, was on full display at the G20 summit in Bali. President Biden, in fact, walked up to Prime Minister Modi and shared a warm hug at the summit.
Two global superpowers, two world leaders, and a warm exchange. US President Joe Biden walked up to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and shook hands at the G20 summit. This happened before they took their seats and sat right next to each other at the summit. Video shows Prime Minister Modi at first appears to have missed seeing President Biden approaching him, but then turns around quickly for a handshake and gives him a hug. PM Modi also shared some light moments as President Biden proceeded to his seat. Prime Minister Modi also met French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at the summit.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi also met with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 dinner that was hosted by Indonesian President Joko Widodo. It was the first meeting between these two gentlemen since the Galwan clash in June of 2020.
All right, now we're getting live visuals of the G20 leaders at the mangrove forest. I'm connecting to our CNN News 18's foreign affairs correspondent Abhishek Jha to get us more on this. Abhishek, tell us more about the visuals that were playing out on our screens.
So this is the visual that we are currently seeing. All the leaders who were present at G20 were scheduled to go to mangrove forest through this.
All right, we seem to have lost that connection, but essentially what we're playing out are visuals of the G20 leaders at a mangrove forest in Bali. Now, the significance of this is related to climate change because what they're doing is they're going to be planting saplings in this forest. Now, I'm crossing back over to our foreign affairs correspondent, Abhishek Jha. Abhishek, over to you, back to what you were saying.
Asha, clearly these mangrove forests are a very important part of our climate protection. If we say they capture about 10 to 12 times carbon emissions or carbon footprints that any other normal forest would capture. But over the last several decades, because of the global warming and depleting coastal line, these mangrove forests are facing existential crisis. This is one region in Indonesia, Bali, where these mangrove forests have been protected, and this is a symbolic way to tell the world that this G20 meeting is also considering the importance of protecting the natural and habitats and diversity of our environment, because these mangrove forests are a symbol. Mangrove forest is a statement that climate change is a concern, and the world leaders wants to work around that. Joko Widodo has been very, very hardworking that way, where he has tried to bring consensus on various issues because of the background that G20 is happening in. There has been a lot of geopolitical tensions only, and this would be probably the most strained time or strained presidency that Joko Widodo of Indonesia has faced to hold the G20 summit level talk because of the clear divide between the two blocks of West and Russia, and that has clear repercussions on this whole the way discussions were happened and the way leaders also participated. We know that President Vladimir Putin has given a miss to this G20 summit level talks. But having said that, this the latest visit that we are seeing is the way to tell the world that leaders do consider the importance of Prime Minister Modi, chatting informally with the various leaders who are present at G20 summit level talks, and the leaders also did a sapling, and also there was this tree plantation function that also happened. All the leaders planted a sapling also. Prime Minister Modi was also seen doing that gesture, and currently we can see all of them, the leaders are at the coast of where this Mongol forest actually starts. Prime Minister Modi is standing next to US President Joe Biden and German Chancellor Scholz, and he's interacting with Indonesian President Joko Widodo. French President Emmanuel Macron is also seen standing there. We know that Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to have a bilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron over the lunch. But in the context of latest rescheduling of various meetings that this G20 summit talk has seen because of the urgent meeting of G7 leaders in the wake of missile falling into the Polish land, we don't know yet whether the scheduled meeting of Prime Minister Modi.
All right, Abhishek, thank you so much for providing us with that information. Now, with this, we're heading into a very short break, but do stay with us.
Nepotism by government officials in the appointment of vice-chancellors to universities. The issue intensified after the Supreme Court annulled the appointment of a vice-chancellor of one of the technical universities in Kerala.
The Left Democratic Front has taken out a protest march from outside the museum compound to Raj Bhavan, protesting against the stand taken by Kerala governor. Hundreds of workers have gathered here under the LDF. All their allies, CPM, CPI, all of them are taking part in this. They have said that it is a higher education protection Samadi that has taken out this march.
The tussle between Kerala Governor Arif Mohammad Khan and Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. In fact, Arif Mohammad Khan has alleged that all appointments in state universities are illegal. He further went on to say that the LDF government thinks that the university and properties are our party cadre and that of relatives. The governor even commented on the protest and said that the government cannot pressurize him.
Research in Kerala universities has come to a standstill. Why? Because bright students of Kerala, they do not want to stay in Kerala. So much party politics, so much interference in the universities, they go safely to some other place. They do not come to the Raj Bhavan. Do you hope they will come to the... because they themselves know that what they are doing is not in accordance with law.
UP police SUV has hit toddlers who were crossing the road in Uttar Pradesh's Bagpat. The video has gone viral on social media.
2 children were hit by a vehicle on a busy street in Bagpat district of Uttar Pradesh. A viral video footage of the event shows a vehicle charging in and striking the 2 youngsters as they crossed the street. The kids were taken straight to the hospital and the treatment is underway. The vehicle turned out to be a police response vehicle. The vehicle that hit turned out to be a police response vehicle. The footage shows bystanders rushing to help children right after the car hit. According to the authorities, children have received minor injuries and are no longer in danger.
NASA is finally moving forward with the Artemis 1 moon mission. The project got delayed post the rocket getting plagued with leaks as well as damage from Hurricane Nicole. But after repairs, it's all set to be launched tomorrow morning.
NASA says it's on track for the Artemis 1 mission to launch Wednesday. That could pave the way for US astronauts to return to the moon. The launch of NASA's most powerful rocket
Zewodo village near Ukraine has been hit in Poland by a missile. Missile hit in a farm in rural area of Poland, and the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile.
There has been two missiles that fallen in the Polish territory, killing 2 people, and these missiles were Russian-made. Poland has also summoned Russian ambassador to this nation. There is also NATO meeting that has been called by Poland.
If it is something that is intentional, the portents are not very good at all, because that would mean that the conflict has been taken into NATO.
Legal battle over his visa status. Australia's New South Wales is reeling under heavy rains. Hundreds of homes have been inundated in and around the city following powerful storms overnight. Hundreds of residents were also rescued with the help of helicopters and boats.
Houses, highways, bridges, farms, everything is underwater. Torrential rains are wreaking havoc in Australia's New South Wales. More than 200 flood rescue operations were conducted in the state over the past 24 hours. This after weeks of record rainfall have caused widespread flooding across parts of eastern Australia. According to officials, no fatalities have been reported so far. Authorities have also issued an evacuation order for the town of Forbes, which was hit by flooding 2 weeks ago. It is the 4th major flood which has hit eastern Australia this year.
A video of a speeding Tesla killing 2 people, including a schoolgirl in China, that's put the car's safety record in question. The accident was caught on camera and it's been widely shared on social media.
2 people, including a schoolgirl, were crushed to death in China after a Tesla ran over them. The horror was caught on CCTV and the video has gone viral on social media. The footage shows the driver allegedly losing control of the vehicle while trying to park it, and then rammed into a motorcyclist and a high school girl. The incident took place in the first week of November in China's southern province of Guangdong. Following the incident, Tesla told Reuters that it will assist the local authorities in investigating the truth behind the accident. China is Tesla's 2nd largest market, and the video of the fatal crash was among the top trending videos on the Weibo social media platform.
Prime Minister Modi attended an event for the Indian community in Bali in Indonesia. While addressing the gathering there, Prime Minister Modi said that New Delhi is leading from the front and is a ray of hope in what is an increasingly complex geopolitical world in the 21st century.
इंडोनेशिया से सीखने के लिए भारत के पास बहुत कुछ है और अपनी 75 वर्षों की विकास यात्रा से भारत के पास भी इंडोनेशिया को देने के लिए बहुत कुछ है। विश्व की अनगिनत कंपनियां ऐसी हैं, कई बड़ी कंपनियां ऐसी हैं जिसके सीईओ भारतीय मूल के हैं।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden, their bonhomie, was on full display at the G20 summit in Bali. President Biden, in fact, walked up to Prime Minister Modi.
Welcome back. So we're focusing on the G20 Leaders Summit. Remember, it's the 17th one that is taking place in Bali. What we were playing out were live shots, essentially of the G20 leaders at a mangrove forest in Bali. Now, this is very significant when it comes to climate change because what the G20 leaders plan to do is they are planting saplings in order to reiterate the fact that climate change is the need of the hour. The focus on climate change is the need of the hour. Now, with this, we're heading into a very short break, but do stay with us because we have more on the other side.
First meeting between these two gentlemen since the Galwan clash in June of 2020. A court in Delhi granted bail to Bollywood actor Jacqueline Fernandez in the 200 crore money laundering case, which also involves conman Sukesh Chandrasekhar. Last week, the court deferred the order on the bail plea of the actor, extended her interim protection up until today. Jacqueline had sought bail on grounds that there was no need for her custody since the investigation is already complete and the charge sheet has been filed.
You've secured this bail order. First of all, reaction.
We are grateful and we bow down to the Honorable Courts. We laid down the law laid by the Honorable Supreme Court. We relied upon it. If you look at the conduct of Jacqueline, she has always been cooperating with the investigating agencies. It has never been a case that she has not cooperated because she attended all the summons and she deposited all the documents. She cooperated with the investigation and which was then recorded by the Honorable Court, and this may have gone in her favor to grant bail.
Congress leader Rahul Gandhi slammed the BJP today on the occasion of tribal freedom fighter Birsa Munda's birth anniversary. Rahul Gandhi said the tribals are the original owners of the country and their rights come first before anyone else. Gandhi also alleged that the ideals of Birsa Munda were being attacked by the BJP and RSS.
एक तरफ से नहीं हो रहा है, चारों तरफ से उनकी सोच पर, उनकी यादगाश पर आरएसएस और बीजेपी आक्रमण कर रहे हैं। बीजेपी के लोग कहते हैं नहीं भैया, आप आदिवासी नहीं हो, आप वनवासी हो।
An 18-year-old footballer in Chennai died because of multiple organ failure following medical negligence by doctors at a government hospital. Priya was being treated for a ligament tear at the government-run peripheral hospital where she was forced to undergo a leg amputation at the Rajiv Gandhi Hospital for further treatment. The health department has also suspended 2 doctors and 10 lakhs compensation has been ordered.
Treatment was planned yesterday. Before that, she had developed myoglobin.